Carolina wins their season opener 31-17 over South Carolina. And Drake Maye didn't even have to be the headline. And folks, that is precisely why this year's Tar Heels are immediately better than last season.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Monday, September 4th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily National Tar Heels show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and I want to thank you for diving into today's show. You everydayers, it's great to be back kicking off another football season. If you're brand new to our show, checking in after football's kicked off, welcome in. We're so glad you're here. Come make this part of your everyday morning routine. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Hey, coming up on the show today, I want to let you know, obviously, early in the weekend, conference expansion was the Masters storyline. We're going to save that for tomorrow's show. We're going to go in depth in that on Tuesday, but wanted to get to football while it was still fresh today. So for those of you who are new to the program since last football season, here's how we handle football recap shows. Right out of the gate, I'll give you my biggest take, what I think is the major storyline we can get from this game. And then second, we always do 3 stars, who I thought were the 3 most important people or units in the game. Thirdly, 3 plays of significance for some reason in the game. And then, of course, the shady stat of the game. You're not going to want to miss that. It's always exciting. So, listen, let's get right into it. Biggest takeaway, and of course, in week 1, there's always going to be so many stories. It's hard to nail it down to just one of them. For example, here's a couple things. You had to end the 4-game losing streak. You did that. You had to start Drake Maye's last season at Chapel Hill differently than Carolina started Sam Howell's last season at Chapel Hill. They did that. You had to let the nation know that the majority of last year wasn't a fluke. Carolina did that. Coach Mac Brown becomes the first ever FBS coach to have 100+ victories at 2 different schools. All of those great storylines, big important storylines out of the gate. But to me, the biggest storyline, most important one for this game is that Drake Maye is so good. How good is he? That to some degree, it doesn't matter what skill players are around him because he's going to raise up the level of all of them, right? We all obviously know that Tez Walker is unfortunately still out, and goodness gracious, we got to get that resolved. Speaking of which, I loved all the national attention on this story on Saturday, whether it was game day, the commentators on Saturday night, Sean McDonough saying like, this is a travesty. I forget his exact phrase. Eric Church wearing Tez Walker's jersey on the sideline. Great stuff. But then also we learned essentially at game time that Nate McCollum was going to be out. So you lose both your transfer wide receivers who were supposed to be replacing Downs and Green. And to some big degree, it doesn't matter. Yes, Carolina is infinitely going to be better with those guys in the lineup. But Drake Maye is this type of player that raises everyone's capability around him. Last week, for example, I kind of almost jokingly referred to Drake as something of a Tom Brady in that, yeah, Tom's better when he's got the best receivers, but man, he's going to spread the ball around. He's going to get it to guys and make them seem like better receivers than they are. And Drake has the ability to do that. Yes, he had a couple drops yesterday, like Gavin Blackwell had one there. And so guys aren't catching the ball at an elite rate, but man, they're making plays all over the field. 9 different receivers caught a pass, 6 caught multiple passes. All 3 tight ends caught at least 3 balls. Actually, they all caught exactly 3 now that I think about it. Ridiculous stuff, spreading it around. I think it was something like in the first 10 or 11 receptions, it was to 8 different receivers. And that's without the guys you expect to be your top 2 receivers, not even in the game. Drake Maye can do it all. It does matter who's around him, you know what I mean? But it's not like this massive, oh crap, we're screwed thing, which I think some people felt as soon as they learned that Nate McCollum was going to be out too. And it's like, that's just not the case. So as we've said, breathe fresh air, be happy, because when Drake Maye's your quarterback, you can rest your head on the pillow easy at night. But as I said in the cold open, here's the other part of this about Drake Maye being so infinitely, insanely good. What's immediately clear to me about the 2023 version of the Tar Heels that was not true about the 2022 Tar Heels is at the same time, as good as Drake is, I don't think he's going to have to do as much this year because the Tar Heels are a more balanced and complete team. And perhaps that's even better news. And I mean that in two ways. I mean balanced in terms of on the offense, passing and running game. I think there's just going to be better capability in the running game. And I mean it in terms of the offense and defensive balance. I mean, it's clear. You saw it on Saturday night. That defense, unless it's just like South Carolina's offense is atrocious and that O-line is atrocious, which I don't think it's as bad as they showed, that Carolina's defense, I believe it showed more about Carolina's defense than South Carolina's offense. And so you've got this better balance. And what's awesome about that is it means that Drake doesn't have to do as much. He doesn't have to take as much on his shoulders. And that was when he really started to get into trouble down the stretch last year. So to me, perhaps one of the most impressive things about this 31-17 victory is that Drake didn't have some dominant, overwhelming, eye-popping statistical outing. He wasn't the leading rusher. Finally, he was the third leading rusher. That's such great news. But Carolina doesn't have to have him be Superman to win. They just need him to be Drake. And that's great news. And I think with the defense, hopefully doing more of what they did Saturday night, it's not going to be incumbent upon the offense to just outscore everybody all season long like they did last year. That's also a relief on the entire offense, not just Drake. Also, it wasn't a one-score game like last year. 6 of Carolina's 9 victories were one-score games. And some of the losses. That's not going to hopefully have to be the case anymore. And it's not like Drake had a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. He was 24 of 32, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he did have those 2 picks. One of them was off of Kobe Paysor's fingertips. It was tipped and caught. I think Drake sailed it a little bit on that one, but it's like, it's okay. Because last year when that happens, you're like, oh, is the defense going to do this? They held, man. They bent, but they did not break. And again, Drake, only the third leading rusher, 4 for 25 on the ground, just enough to keep things honest and him hopefully healthy. And there's going to be this part of the conversation too, because of what those stats were. It's not some game that screams Heisman candidate. And so while that might be bad for Drake's individual accolades, I think it's much better for long-term team success. And so, you know, if Drake's sitting at 303 TDs and 50 yards rushing a game, I can live with that. And is it going to have him in the Heisman conversation? I don't know. I hope so. But I can guarantee you this. Drake Maye would trade a Heisman for winning an ACC championship or getting to 10 wins, having a great bowl, whatever, right? Obviously, you'd love to have that. But you hear the heart on it? Yeah, I know that you do. So there you go. My biggest take of the game, my biggest takeaway, Drake Maye is so good that it doesn't matter who's around him. And thank goodness this Carolina team is a more complete team than last year, more depth. And so Drake doesn't have to be a hero Saturday night in and Saturday night out. Now, coming up next, my 3 stars of the game. And look, it is a difficult choice because there were a lot of studs. So see if you can guess my choices, and we'll get to them in just a second. But before we do so, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked on Tar Heels is brought to you by Athletic Brewing. It's time for your game changer of the week, brought to you by the Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Kaimon Rucker's National Defensive Player of the Week performance on Saturday night, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, full flavor, and well-crafted, just like a full-strength beer. I chose Kaimon Rucker for this week's Game Changer of the Week because of not only his ridiculous play on the field, which we'll talk more in depth about in just a couple minutes, that earned him these national honors, but because of the path that he's taken to get there and working his absolute tail off. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy them online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Hey, want to let you know that the college football season is obviously here, and Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On College Football Live kickoff, airing each Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only Locked On can. So find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, here we go. Next conversation. My 3 stars of the game. And so this is always either 3 individuals or a unit, maybe one of the position groups that just did the things that they needed to do. And man, right out of the gate, this is both because of off-field storylines and on-field performance, is British Brooks. And, we just talked about Kaimon Rucker in that ad read. And trust me, he's coming up in just a second. But man, we got to talk about British here because of his story. Obviously, unheralded running back for so much of his career, got an opportunity, kind of late in the 21 season, and made the most of that and was heading into last year's season as RB1 and then just right on the cusp of first game, like right leading up to it, had that season-ending injury and was out. And it's like, man, British Brooks might just be done here. Like eligibility is essentially up, but he decides to come back like mid-season. We already knew. And, I kind of coming into the year, just to be honest, looking back to spring, I was like, it's great. British is coming back, but he'll probably be RB3 or 4, probably have Elijah Green, maybe Omarion Hampton, at the top of the depth chart, maybe Caleb Hood's back healthy, whatever it may be. But no, here comes British Brooks leaving fall camp as RB1, getting that start. And of course, this dude comes out and notches his second career 100-plus yard rushing game in his first game back. 15 rushes for 103 yards to be precise, his second highest total ever. Had a long of 29-yard rush, had multiple catches out of the backfield, some important ones to help pick up first down. But again, even just bigger than what he was doing was the fact that he was playing in this game. Bigger than the stats is this story. And that's, folks, I talk about this all the time. That's what sports is all about. The stories and the people that do it. And man, this is one of those times. If you missed it, I posted a video of it on my Twitter that I grabbed from Jordan Cranmer, who had posted the video, but just of Coach Brown and British just in this special moment, this special embrace post game. Is British is just, it looked like he's just weeping on Coach Brown's shoulder. And you can just tell everything it means to be back on the field and to be able to contribute for his team. And this whole North Carolina squad is behind British Brooks. And so, man, this journey is so unreal, and I can't wait to see what he does this year. All right, we can't wait on Kaimon Rucker any longer. This man is the Walter Camp National Defensive Player of the Week. What? Who on earth would have guessed that a Tar Heel defensive player, especially one not named Cedric Gray, would be bestowed with this award? But here we are. And why? Because my man, Kaimon Rucker, 8 total tackles, second most on the team to Cedric Gray's 9. But 6 of them were solo, most on the team. He had 2 sacks, 5.5 tackle for loss. What? 5.5 TFLs. That's absolutely ridiculous. And it's kind of the same thing as what we just talked about with British Brooks, where Kaimon's, a little bit undersized from a height standpoint, but man, he keeps beefing up and he's built like an absolute brick and was ferocious in getting to the backfield to cause Spencer Rattler struggles all night long. And it just makes me so happy in this age and era of the transfer portal to see somebody like Kaimon Rucker who has just stuck around, developed, and gotten better and better and better. And now here he is, part of this, much maligned last year defensive line that seems like they might be in a better place now. We're going to have to, see it happen. You got to build on what happened on Saturday, but good grief, Kaimon Rucker. That is a performance. You are one of our 3 stars. And then the third of the 3 stars is actually 2 position groups as one, and that is the offensive line and the defensive line, obviously of which Kaimon Rucker is part. Here's why. These 2 groups, as I just said about the defensive line, coming in, biggest question marks. I know for some people it's the secondary. For me, it's the offensive line and the defensive line for 2 reasons. Offensive line, it's their responsibility to keep Drake Maye, up, healthy, able to do what he does, right? Able to block for receivers and running backs and everything else they got to clear the path for. Defensive line, you got to make life more difficult on the opposing quarterback. It just has to happen. And then that ultimately makes the secondary better, which is why I choose the D-line for my question marks over the secondary. But boy, these lines both showed up in a major way. I'm going to give you the most eye-popping stat for me here in just a little bit when we get to the shady stat of the game. But let me just give you some other numbers from this team. South Carolina rushed 31 times and wound up with -2 net yards. Now, I know sack yardage is factored into that in the NCAA game. Whatever, that's fine. But still, -2 total. We're just going to rest on that. I said 5.5 TFLs for Kaimon Rucker, 16 as a team. Now, obviously, that's not all the D-line, but it starts there and goes forward. And on the flip side, Carolina only allowed 1 negative play all night. One. It was a 5-yard loss on a run. And again, same thing. That's not totally up to the offensive line, to stop negative plays from happening. But they're probably the key factor in that, right? And so, man, just both these units doing their job. But as I said earlier, while I'm crazy encouraged by this, like, for example, with the defensive line, because you're going to hear people talking about, is Carolina's D-line really that much improved, or is South Carolina's offensive line just porous? Well, you got to go out next week against Appalachian State and prove that this was not a fluke. And then you got to do it again against Minnesota and then up at Pittsburgh the next week and just keep this thing rolling. These 2 units, O-line, D-line, you are our third of the 3 stars of the night. And boy, it had to feel good for these units to say, look at us. And I love that they did it without having to chew out reporters in a press conference like Coach Deion Sanders did, or here's all our receipts we got from it. Man, they're just going about their business. And hear me not hating on Deion. I'm just saying you don't have to go about it that way. And I love that they know what's up, and it's awesome. All right, folks, it was a complete game for the Tar Heels, but several individual plays helped put it all together. What were the standout plays, and what is the first shady stat of the season? We're going to get to that in just a second. But before we do, I need to tell you that today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL this season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. You want to get on that? Because NFL starts Thursday night. Holy cow, 3 days from now. Now's the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use and you can be on everything. You can bet on everything, from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer that you're not going to want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. On to our 3 plays of the game and then our shady stat of the game to wrap up Monday's show. Now, again, for those of you who are new, let me just talk about what we're picking here. It's either plays that like were big momentum swings, plays that could have been big momentum swings. Maybe they're just plays that are really cool. That's like, holy cow, did you see what that dude did? Anything like that that we pick out. So right out of the gate, play number 1, coming out of the halftime locker room. Want to set the scene here, but you remember what happened. South Carolina went for an onside kick, got it, recovered it, deflating for Carolina. And I immediately wrote that down. I was like, yo, this could be a really negative turning point. Probably one of our key plays, but unfortunately for a bad reason. Let me set it up. North Carolina is leading 17-14 at halftime, which could have been more. I'm still a little confused why Coach Brown didn't use one of his 3 timeouts right there. Rattler went down with like 1:09 to go in the first half. Call a timeout. Give Drake Maye 69 seconds to go down the field and give yourself more of a lead. And then you get the ball back after halftime. That's kind of the context of this. But the Tar Heels are leading. They know they're about to get the ball back. And so you're like, oh, like at halftime, I just kept thinking, man, if Carolina could get a score right out of the gate here, preferably a touchdown, gives them a 2-possession lead. You feel good about creating a little separation. Then you just keep scoring, stopping, and extending your lead. Conversely, we obviously know what did happen. South Carolina gets this onside kick, and my brain immediately flips to, oh, instead of maybe the Tar Heels having a 2-score lead, South Carolina actually could take back the lead here. That's a reversal of fortune. That is not bueno, right? But here's what happens. Carolina gets, South Carolina recovers the kick. Carolina forces a 3, technically 4 because South Carolina went for it on 4th down, didn't get it, turnover on downs. Carolina turns it into 7 and a 2-score lead. The big play was a 37-yard pass to Gavin Blackwell, just sliding down at the 1. A little more on the money. Maybe he was a walk-in 6 points, and Drake Maye finishes with 3 touchdown passes on the night. But there were just so many swings of momentum and emotion right there within all that. But Carolina thankfully holds that defense again, baby. I mean, can you imagine having to be the defense coming out and doing that? That's very difficult to get into that mindset immediately and do that job. But Carolina stops, gets the ball back, scores, and then you've got that 2-possession lead, 24-14. That's our first play. Second play, this one's about the play itself, not about the moment. And interestingly enough, it's coming just on Carolina's next offensive possession after the one we talked about. So right after Carolina makes it 24-14, it is a legit 3-and-out at that point. Carolina gets the punt back. There's about 9:50 left in the third quarter. The first play, Carolina's at their own 45. The first play, what was it, a bootleg out to the left? I believe it was, if I'm remembering correctly. And Drake Maye has a guy coming from his left. He's working to his left and has 2 Gamecocks kind of closing in on him with a third a little further away on the left. And John Copenhaver's coming across the field. May, turn open shoulder, kind of gets that. I called it very Mahomesian, and just drops down to that sidearm angle and threads it through those 2 Gamecocks right to John Copenhaver. It was a nifty, brilliant pass that gets it right. You want to pick up on what you had just done, getting that lead out to 24-14. You get another stop, and it's like, dude, you got to go. You got to put another score on the board right here. So this was the first play of that drive, 16 yards to Copenhaver to get Carolina into Gamecock territory. 7 plays later, Copenhaver bookends this drive with a really nice touchdown catch. I mean, honestly, this touchdown could have been one of our 3 plays by itself. Drake's kind of fallen back and has to just chuck it up and trust his man in the end zone to get it. Copenhaver adjusts to the ball, comes back, touchdown. And then I think got a celebration penalty, whatever. He deserves it right there. That is our second play of the game and the final score of the game, actually. That was what gave Carolina 31 points, and nobody else scored. All right. Third play of the game. And you might hear this and be like, dude, that's not even what? stick with me. First possession of the game goes to South Carolina. The Tar Heels, Carolina, get a 3 and out. And it happens because of a drop from Juice Wells, South Carolina's best receiver, which, to be fair, was a little bit of a high ball. But here's why I bring this play up. Carolina rushed 3 on that third down. I think it was 3rd and 4, if I remember correctly. Rushed 3 against South Carolina's front. Kaimon Rucker gets to Rattler on this play. Doesn't get him down. Rattler wriggles free. Understandable. He's going to do that sometimes. But I was so encouraged to see this because there's been all this talk from Coach Chizik about, hey, we're going to be more aggressive. We're going to get to the quarterback more. We're going to be disruptive. We're going to be in the backfield. And it's like, okay, yeah, you say that, but is it going to happen? And this was the indication to me right at the beginning. I mean, I didn't know what was coming was about to come, but I did feel a lot better because just this initial indication of like, ooh, that's a 3-man rush. And it probably should have been a sack to get off the field. Now, thankfully, still did get off the field, but that to me was an initial indication. I'm hopeful that that's not an indication of just what was going to happen last night, but what we will see from this defensive line all season long. Now, to help them out, I would love to see a little more press coverage, man. It feels like last year the DBs are back. We had a lot more of that. Maybe it was just second half on Saturday as Carolina's just trying to give a little bit of a cushion and not get beat. But still, there's that. But anyway, I was so encouraged by that penetration right out of the bat in this game while the O-line was still fresh. And you got 3 guys going after Rattler, and Rucker gets home but doesn't get Rattler down. I love to see that. All right, first shady stat of the season. I got to put on my sunglasses because, Isaac Shade, shady stat. It just makes sense. I always make the joke, we got to get this segment sponsored by a sunglasses company. So if that's you out there, you're part of a sunglasses company, holler at me. Let's make this thing happen. The shady stat of the game, I have to go here. 9 sacks for the defense. Like, how can you not use it? It's the most obvious shady stat I've ever seen in my time doing this. But all of it, I mean, you've probably heard the numbers, but let me just make sure. All of last season, Carolina, the entirety, 17 sacks in their 14 games played. And they get more than half of that number just on Saturday with 9. Now, they're not going to get 9 game in and game out, but good grief. I mean, the dichotomy of those two things is crazy. And in fact, this is the most in a single game since getting 10 on September 9th of 2000, 23 years ago against Wake Forest. Kaimon Rucker had 2. We talked about it. The other player that had 2 was the Florida State transfer, Amari Gaynor. Great to see him getting home. And man, we just got to keep doing this. Keep this penetration up. I was so encouraged by it. The defense was physical. They were aggressive. I love to see it. Now, here's the other thing. Getting sacks is very sexy and one of the things we want to talk about. But not allowing sacks, we don't talk about that as much, right? It's not as heralded to be on the offensive line and not allow sacks. But we would be doing a disservice to these men that are protecting Drake Maye if we did not talk about exactly what it is that the offensive line did last on Saturday. And that was allow 0 sacks. The defense is out there getting 9 sacks. The offense is allowing 0 sacks. And this is a credit to the offensive line for their work, 100%. It also is a credit to Drake Maye for getting rid of the ball in time. It's a credit to new offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey for his schemes and rolling Drake out and getting the ball out as it needed to be. So it's all of these groups trusting each other to do the job they need to do. Great work by the line to they got to go out and make it happen. But great work by Drake to get rid of the ball. Great work by Coach Lindsey to draw up the right things to help make this happen. So shady stat of the game, 9 sacks and then 0 sacks allowed. Boom. Let's do that more often. There's your first shady stat of this season. Folks, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Man, it's fun to celebrate a victory right out of the gate against South Carolina. Got to always make sure you put South in front of their name because you can't just say Carolina because we all know who that is. Coming up tomorrow, like I said, we're going to talk more about the ACC expansion, everything that's going on. I've been putting together some conference tournament brackets, how I think that'll be played out. We'll check into all of it together. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow me at Isaac Shade. Email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Would love to have conversations with you. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on audio or video formats. Really easy. If you're watching on YouTube, just hit that button. Also, while you're there, smash the like button so we know you are here. It just helps us know everything. Again, would love to know your comments on who would have been your 3 stars of the game, what would have been your 3 plays of the game, what would have been your shady stat of the game. Man, it is always a great day to be a Tar Heel, especially coming off of something like this. It's a great week. Hopefully we can get Nate McCollum healthy. Hopefully we can get Tez Walker on the field. We'll talk about all that as the week goes forward. I hope you have a great Monday. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.